Some of you may recognize me from the GK. I may not be as smooth talking as Jeff. I may not have the sweet southern drawl of Dustin Faulkner. And I'm definitely not nearly as smart as Sam Jones or Patrick Wyatt. But here I am, and you're going to have to just deal with that, I suppose. We're not going to get into who I am, or because it's already been gone through. You can go check it out on the interview that I had with Jeff Dornik. It would have been probably my first one, as well as there's an article of that if you want to get to know my history or my background, you can go check it out from there. We're not going to waste time on that because you don't care who I am and I don't care who you are. So let's move forward. It seems to me that we're going to talk about a child that has risen through the ranks that people honor as a hero, that we're going to knock back down to size. And then we're going to talk about the Extinction Rebellion, what they're doing, those crazy people that are gluing themselves to the side of trains. And then we're going to talk about some fracking as well as nuclear energy. Actually have a few solutions that are realistic and not crazy, which is great. So, I'm your host, and this is The Schumann Show. Alright, so we're going to break this down. We're going to talk about Greta Thunberg, which it seems like she's impossible to go after because, she's a child and everything, and apparently you're not supposed to talk about children or to scale back their ideas because you might ruin their entire future and their ego, and then they wouldn't get participation trophies, and that would just be horrible, So, well, we're going to talk about it and knock her down to size a little bit. So, she's 15 years old, and she decided to start this whole thing by holding a sign outside of the Swedish parliament that says, "School strike for climate change." I wish I were this clever when I was growing up, because there was 100 different ways that I was thinking of skipping school, and none of them ever came up where I would have struck for climate change, mainly because I don't think my parents would have let me get away with it. But as we come to see that her parents are kind of huge pushovers, and this might go why she acts like such a spoiled brat when she's on TV. So definitely a big part of it, because her dad said, "We respect that she wants to make a stand. She can either sit at home and be really unhappy or protest and be happy." Okay, well, that's cool. I mean, there's a lot of things that make me happy. Like when I was growing up, about her age, probably younger, she started this whole thing when she was like 8 years old with her parents. And when I was 8 years old, I was really obsessed with fire a lot. I would set my shoelaces on fire, and that made me happy because then I could move that fire to a bigger fire. And not saying anything happened, but the entire playground's made of wood, so that's pretty neat, and that makes me happy. But I don't think my parents would have let me skip school to go perform these things. Instead, I think I would have had quite the opposite outcome in my side. But, to each their own. Who am I to say what you can and cannot let your kids get away with, I guess. Anyhow, she convinced her parents to become vegan. Vegan. No more bacon. No more hamburgers. Nothing. That's I'm sorry, Jeff. It's not how real people live. Again, I'm sorry, Jeff. To have that much control over her parents, to give up meat and animal products. Her parents are the ones who abused her, not her. Okay? So let's move forward with that. Her mother was also an opera singer, and with that career, she was required to fly all around Europe to go visit all these other places to perform. Well, when she had her little spat at the age of 8, she decided that it was inappropriate for her mother to be flying around to go make a living for them. So instead, her mom decided to scale back her flying, which I guess props to her, because most of these climate change activists will fly all over and not care at all about how much fuel they're using to disarm disarm our ecosystem and cause harm to all the horrible plants and animals in this entire world. So At least I'll give her that. She's not being as hypocritical as a lot of people. So, not only did she decide what her parents eat, not only did she decide she no longer wanted to go to school, she also decided her mom's career needs to take a hit because it's killing plants. So once she started all these strikes, multiple cities ended up having about 1 million students participating in these strikes from all across the world. In America, over in Europe, all of those places. So basically, I'm pretty sure it's just an excuse for kids to skip out of school. Let's be honest here. Nobody cares about the environment. I mean, think about it. You really think that they're that concerned about the environment, these same people who are eating Tide Pods consistently? Or remember the whole oven challenge where they would put their hand on an oven stove and see how long they could hold it there because it was something they enjoyed doing. These are the people that you want to take your advice from? Okay, go for it. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I would rather choose people with scientific backgrounds and data to back their claims rather than somebody who's stuffing soap in their mouth. I mean, I've had that done too, but it was for other reasons, right? So, with that, she gets to now go traveling across the world. She gets to go to Canada, America, Mexico, and Chile to go talk to them about how horrible our ecosystems are and how we're going to destroy the world, and that she's not going to have a place to live because there won't be a world after, I think it was like a year, the Arctic caps are going to melt and this world won't be around and nobody's going to have a place to live and there's going to be food shortages. Yeah, well, there's not much evidence to back that up at all, if we're being completely honest about this. We'll get into that a little bit later. We also notice that when she goes around and talks to these places, she offers up no solutions. Instead, she just sits up there on stage and she cries consistently about how horrible of a situation she is in without proposing any actual realistic solutions to fix these issues. And where here, we will actually talk about a few of these solutions where if this actually does end up getting bad, then we have some actual things we can turn to that are not so crazy to the economy and to foreign policy. Because if she was super serious about this, we'd be marching into Thailand, we'd be marching into some of the third world countries who are using more industrial stuff that is very, very unclean compared to what we're using here. And we would shut them down, which would be a catastrophic event in regards to our foreign policy. It's just so dumb. Why isn't she going to China or any of these places to go talk? It's just weird. So, she stated that everyone out here, it is not the time for civil disobedience. It is time to rebel. And the proceeds will go toward Extinction Rebellion. What is Extinction Rebellion? You may have seen things following around Twitter of these people who are supergluing their hands and feet and faces and everything to trains, planes, and then standing in the roads with signs blocking people from getting to their jobs. This is part of the Extinction Rebellion movement. I went onto their website and listened to one of the speakers talk. It was just the first video because I choose life, and I was really contemplating suicide by the end of the first video because of her constant droning on about things she had no idea she was talking about, and it was extremely painful. So, the Extinction Rebellion is using Greta Thunberg as one of their spokesperson to go out and raise awareness to this entire group. Why use a child? Okay? They're using a child because people think if they put up this little girl up in front of the stage, anybody who attacks her or says that she's wrong or against her can then be viewed as a bigot and that they're just attacking children and destroying their hopes. That's not a logical argument at all. I don't care who you are. If you're saying something that's dumb, you need to be called out for it, right? Because if we just let people go on believing what they want to believe, then pretty soon we're not living in reality, we're living in a fantasy land. I mean, you'll have kids growing up buying a bunch of wardrobes thinking that they could hop through them and go to Narnia because that's what they believe, and they haven't been told any different because that would be crushing their hopes and dreams. Therefore, the price of wardrobes would go up because they're in demand, and then I wouldn't be able to afford one to put into my bedroom, and then my wife would be upset because my clothes would be all over the floor, as if that's going to change anyway. But hey, it gives her hope, right? That, and then people will start believing other fantasies. Like, guys will start believing that they're women. Oh. They're doing that too. Never mind. I guess that's a thing. Let's move on from there because that's not a good path. We're just straying further and further and further away from reality is what we're doing. We want to grow up in these worlds of make-believe because then we can either claim ourselves to be such a victim to where the government owes us everything because we're too irresponsible to pick up the responsibility ourselves, to people who just want things that are given to us rather than taking responsibility and coming up with solutions. The people who are always complaining about problems are not people coming up with solutions because they don't want a solution. They want to just complain and have things handed to them. The people who present an issue with solutions are the people who are actually working to fix certain things. And I'm not even completely on board with the whole global warming thing, but considering it's become such a big issue in today's society, I think it's something that needs to be talked about. So here I am, and here you are, and I am so sorry for you. I wouldn't want to listen to me at all. So, jumping back in with the Extinction Rebellion, their whole goal is to move the Overton window. So what is the Overton window? The Overton window is, it's a window that deems what is acceptable when speaking about a specific topic. Okay? So, political correctness would be something that's deemed within the Overton window. So, you used to be able to call guys guys and girls girls and women women. Well, the left has been pushing that window further and further to the left to where now you can't identify people by their genders because that is no longer deemed politically correct. It is, you can't call people gay, you can't say any of these things because, that's offensive and that hurts people. So that is deemed unacceptable. It is outside of the Overton window. So they continually move this window over to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. It's a way of controlling free speech, is essentially what it is. If we can limit what you say and what is deemed acceptable or unacceptable to say, then we can control your viewpoints and what you actually have to say, thus rendering your points useless because they no longer take a stand in with the reality of today's world. And they can use that and shape words to mean things that they don't mean. We see it constantly with what the word racist. It used to actually mean something, and now it's just a common slang term for a conservative because they have, no logic or facts, so it's just a word that they still throw around that no longer has meaning to anybody. Anyhow, so that's what the Overton window is. So they're moving this to change the dialogue of what happens today in regards to what you do, how you get around, where you move to, how you travel, and pretty much how you live out your life, how corporations should be ran. So they're trying to move it into a point where government intervenes themselves within these corporations and they have control over them, really ends up being able to run them. Now, why is that the case? The case, again, goes back to because people are too irresponsible to pick up a responsibility for themselves, to take care of themselves in today's society. So therefore, if they can get their hands within the pockets of corporations, they can control those corporations and bring down wages so that everybody gets paid the same and everybody's on the same socialistic economy because they believe that that's the way everything should be ran. That is the background of this environmentalist movement. And we'll get to that later because she makes some pretty crazy statements that make absolutely no sense. But it blames all the rich people because we have to blame the rich people. It makes sense, I guess. So, with this, he then says that it is no longer the time for simple civil protesting. It's time to advocate for jail time, hunger strikes, and sacrificial action, which we see a lot of that, which I shouldn't enjoy as much as I do, but it's it's been pretty great. Like, there was this video that was going around for a while of this gal who, I think it was a gal, I don't know. I'm not here to assume their gender, okay? But they took themselves and they glued themselves to this train, not saying anything. Like, I've never seen a human person hold back a train, but it definitely intrigues me. I mean, I guess I take that back. I saw it in Spider-Man, like, a while ago when I was younger, and he did it, kind of. He struggled a little bit, but he did it. And if this person was trying to do that same thing, that'd be cool, and that'd be something that I'd watch. So I say throw the hammer down, get that train a bucking, because I'm willing to give them a shot if you are. The other thing I saw was somebody glued themselves to the top of a plane, of a jet, and they were trying to take them down. But talk about economy seating. You know, that's a whole new way to fly, and you get like the ultimate window seat. Like, nobody wants to sit in that middle seat or even in the aisle, really, because everything's like right next to you and you don't really have any place to go. Everybody wants the window seat. Well, now, if you can glue yourself to the top of a jet, and then you can take off, the whole thing is a window. And not only that, but you can lay down in comfort. Like a year ago, flew to Thailand, got thrown up on the flight back, got thrown up on. So you know what? Next time I go flying, I might super glue myself to the top of the plane, because it seems like a much better seat than what I had flying these airlines. So props to that guy for giving me that idea. Well, like I said, they tried taking him down, but I don't know. They should just, if the guy didn't pay for the seat, I guess he shouldn't be sitting there. I don't know. I think it'd be a bargain, but whatever. To each their own. We also see, you probably saw that video that was on YouTube. Some guy standing in the middle of the road, and then some dude with scrubs comes over and he just rips the sign out of their hands. Then he takes it, crumbles it up, and like hucks it over the fence. Well, the dude was wearing scrubs, so chances are he probably actually had to do something important, like save someone's life or be there for something like that. And if somebody was standing in the middle of the road, I don't know. It's you know, to me, he was a lot nicer than what people from around here would have been. They would have probably been ran into. This stuff actually happened around where I was from a little bit. When the Dapple pipeline came through, there was like a lot of protests, and people were blocking bridges and standing in front of the courthouses, and they were just they were throwing fire bombs and all this stuff, and none of it really turned out that bad until the police used water cannons on them. I know, fire bombs, totally fine, acceptable. But you break out that water cannon, it's the end of the world, man. And that went on for a super long period of time, and then when they left the site, people like, you know, me, who had nothing to do with the entire protest, had to go and pick up the area because all their trash was being thrown into the rivers and into the sides of the embankments and everything like that. So it was a good try to stand for environmentalism, but you might want to pick up after yourself when you leave a protest. Just saying, people might take you a little more seriously. Just a little. But they were chaining themselves to heavy equipment. It was pretty fantastic. So these are the things that they're advocating for now, because they say that having policy, nobody will listen to them. Want to know why they won't listen to them? Because they're crazy. Okay? Let's move on to more of what this gal has to say. And all of this is available on Extinction Rebellion, so you can go check it out yourself. Don't take my word for it. Go ahead and watch these videos. If you can make it through them, good luck. But I'm here for you, and I tried to go through them for you so that you wouldn't have to. But I wouldn't trust me either. So here we go. She stated, "You don't have to know things for certain to have to act upon it." Fully admitting, then, that they don't have the science to back the outcome of climate change. You don't have to know things for certain to have to act upon it. Okay, there's a lot of things we don't know for certain, right? Like, we can speculate about things, but we don't know for certain. This is such an insane contention to be so crazy and to call for what they're calling for in regards to everybody needs to give up planes, we need to kill all the farting cows, we need to completely stop fossil fuels, we need to stop coal manufacturing, all this stuff, okay, based upon something that science does not back. That is absolutely nuts. And then, not to mention the foreign policy that would be involved with that. I mean, could you imagine them trying to cram down all these developing countries and now those people have to starve because they don't have the technology that we have today? Who's going to pay for that? Are we just going to go over there and give them the technology? Where's that money going to come from? Whose pockets is that coming out of? Somebody hasn't really thought all this through at all. So, with that, could you imagine if we acted on things that we didn't know for certain every day? Like, I don't know if I'm going to die on my way to work tomorrow, so I better just not show up because it's a chance and it's an outcome that could happen, so I think I'll just stay home. It's stupid. It is idiotic to bring something to that high of a level based on nothing. Then she claims that they're going to lose the entire Arctic next year. Next year. It's October. Okay? It's a few months away. So next year the Arctics are going to be gone, guys. Jeff, California is going to be underwater, bud. Sorry. But you could always come to the Midwest, I suppose. There's lots of cornfields and beautiful scenery. Just hint, hint. All right. It's up to you. So, with that, we go into... So, next year, I'll probably, if I end up eating my words and places are legitimately underwater and the complete Arctic is completely melted and gone, then I'm sorry that I misinformed you, but just seems really nuts. I mean, weren't we all supposed to be dead already? Like 3 times over? First starting with like Trump being elected, I guess, in general. So, she then says that science can tend to be falsified because they use statistics based upon evidence which cannot be used because science shows that humans have never been extinct, thus rendering a 0% chance of extinction. So because science has not recorded that humans have ever gone extinct is why they can't take science seriously. Oh. Science has also not physically proven that when a human body gets flung into the middle of the sun, that they will die. We speculate, but nobody's ever done it. Bruce Willis, I believe, is the closest person to get that close, but I don't think he went into the middle of the sun. I don't know. It's been a while. But he'd be about the closest. That's a documentary, right? I think it was. But, so are we just going to start flinging at things or people to do things based upon 0% evidence because it's never been proven before? Let's just start throwing people into ships, blasting them off to space, into complete unknowns because it's never been proven. People can't live out there. So let's just go for it. Again, it's extremely stupid. This is why people don't take you seriously. You want to know how to be taken seriously? Don't say stupid stuff. This is stupid stuff. Stop. Seriously. Stop. With that, she also says that the ultimate cause of all these factors of the poor environment, of the pollution, everything like this, it's because of overconsumption and overpopulation, especially by the rich. One more time. Okay? Ultimate cause of all these factors is overpopulation and overconsumption, especially by the rich. What? Let's go to the left in our own country, okay? Bernie Sanders had to change the way he talked this last debate. He had to stop saying the top 1%, and now he had to say the 1/10 of 1%. Okay? Those are the rich. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, guys. Let's just say the top 1%. Okay? That 1%, they're the ones who are overproducing, and they're the ones who are overpopulating. Not the 99%, the 1%. The rich are the only ones overpopulating. Apparently, they have the money to just go out to whatever store it is, buy a bunch of kids, and then just let them run wild and overpopulate, and then those become the 1%, and apparently they kill each other off because they have to stay at the 1%, because if we get more than the 1%, that would include people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, so we can't have that happen, so they have population control and all that stuff. So it just doesn't make sense how you can overpopulate at being the 1%. But yeah, let's go with that. I mean, run with that. See how far that gets you. But this all goes into tying in what they have to tie it into the big corporations. They have to tie it in so that government has the ability so that they can inch their fingers into corporate America. So that they can get within the cracks that this is supposedly trying to form within our corporations by the people that are crazy like this, so that they don't no longer have to work and that they get a paycheck for spewing on about nonsense that they don't even know what they're talking about. They use this as the ability for government to run these companies so that everybody gets paid the same, so there is absolutely no more ambition to become something within this country, because then you will be told what to do, because you will be so heavily regulated by environmental restrictions that you won't be able to start up your own business. You won't be able to make the products that things may be needed, and you won't be able to find new ways of doing that thing, because the government will already have you completely regulated, so much so with using the environmentalists as their crutch and their way to invest into this sort of ideology. So they have to get the rich in there, and apparently it's overpopulation and overconsumption. So top 1% is definitely must eat a lot and consume a lot to be the main factor of this. So then she goes on to say that the thing that is stopping them is fascism taking over democracy. No, they are the ones calling for government to step in to privatize business and tell them how they should be ran, using environmentalists as a crutch. They are the fascists. They are the ones who are calling for government control because they're too lazy to go out and expect other people to take responsibility for the environmental effects. Okay, like I said, I don't really believe in this whole global warming thing much. I mean, you can see it kind of warming, but to me, we haven't been recording the temperatures or anything like that of the Earth for long enough to really see a drastic change. We know that the Earth is constantly changing up and down in climates. And back when, dinosaurs were on the Earth, there wasn't a whole lot of ice. And then we went through a huge ice age. I mean, I could only imagine what these people would be screaming about then. But granted, I'm all down for global warming because it could definitely warm up around here in the winter. Not even kidding. So if it is a thing, let's go. So with that, we then turn to all this stuff, and when the government, so she calls us the fascists because I don't know, because she wants more regulation, and apparently fascists don't want regulation, which doesn't make much sense to me. So she should probably read a book, like any book at all that would teach her anything about history. It's we who are a democracy that want to choose to make decisions for ourselves that are going to better this entire world. Capitalism always takes care of its own issues, and we'll get into that later. Even with the environmentalist thing, it wasn't used directly that way, but we could see that taking a strong foothold in case if it ever does or anything crazy like that. It's the freedom of the people that allows them to have their ingenuity to be able to change the outcome of the present things at hand. We see it time and time again whenever a situation arises. It's people's freedom and ingenuity that comes together, that thinks of solutions for problems instead of just complaining about the problems and hoping that somebody else will just take care of it for you. It's the responsibility, the freedom is the responsibility for you to take control of a situation and handle it the way that you see it should be handled. It's the exchangement of ideas against one another that we fight each other out, find out what the best solution is, where if that is all completely governed, you're limiting what could potentially be the cure for the cause of what's going on. for the problem of what's going on. That's what I meant. I'm saying a lot of weird stuff because this is my first one, so it's gonna be weird and really cringy. So hang in here, guys. All right. So another thing she stated, which was my favorite part personally, I read science and cry fairly often. If you go to your nearest Sam's Club, they sell like tissue boxes within boxes, and then those boxes are all put together on pallets and shrink wrapped. So if she is ever going to try to read science again, you can go to Sam's Club and you can pick up one of those big things and you can just cry your eyes out. It'll be the greatest time ever, because I know she stated something like she feels comfortable and she likes doing it out of these things. So that's really weird and creepy and cool. So yeah, hey, you be you, go for it. So she cries because of science, because she believes that it is completely politicized. No, just because something doesn't back up what you're saying doesn't make it completely politicized. Just makes you an idiot. Okay, let's be real about this. Just because you read through science and it's not backing up your statements that you're claiming to have, she is stating this on her own page, in her own video, that she doesn't believe in science or she reads and cries fairly often because of how politicized science has become. Maybe you're just dumb. Ever think of that? No, probably not. Chances are, if science doesn't back what you're saying, you're probably wrong, right? Accept it. Or cry about it, I guess. Like I said, Sam's Club. So, this gentleman that she mentioned, it's in her video. I didn't write down his name because I didn't have the time to back up and get it down again. But if you want to read through the video, you can go for it. I don't know. She said that you could read and make your own assessments, but apparently he's an idiot too, because he claims scientists have begun self-censoring themselves in regards to the climate change. Again, just because scientists in general don't agree with what you're saying because the evidence doesn't support it, you're probably just wrong. Okay? Yeah, I know. It's a tough pill to swallow. But yeah, definitely they're self-censoring because apparently the Clintons will go after them or something. Make them all suicide themselves. Anyhow, so what are some of the culprits and some of the solutions that have come about in regards to climate change? Well, natural gas is one of them. Fracking, which is kind of pretty much what we're pretty much using right now. Fracking is pretty much where they drill a hole into the earth down to the shale level. And when it comes down to a certain level, the pipe itself kind of comes down at a length, at a 90-degree angle. Okay, and then it goes horizontal throughout the shale deposit. Then they throw down a gun in there, and this gun comes down to the bottom of the pipe, and it shoots like little inch-line holes throughout the rock. And then they pull this gun back out, and then they take what's called fracking fluid, which is 90% water, and then it's 10% acids, disinfectants, lubricants, and sand, mud, stuff like that. And they pump that down hole. Well, then they pressurize it up so much that when it seeps into these cracks within the rock, it fractures the rock, thus fracturing the rock. Cool, huh? So when this is done, it allows the oil and the natural gas to come back up through the pipe, and that's how they harvest it and all that good stuff. So that's what fracking is. The materials that come back out of the hole are considered hazardous. There's a bunch of radiation, to also include the stuff that was also pumped down within the hole in regards to like some of the acids and the disinfectants that they use. But all of this stuff is trucked off to hazard disposal sites where it's pumped into big tanks. If they're following the rules and everything like that, that's how it is supposed to be done. Where they treat all this water and pump it back in, or some of them recycle it, but that's kind of becoming less and less used because then the water coming back up that's been used a second time is actually a lot more hazardous than what it was before. So if they treat it and then they continue to treat it and until it becomes, safe, and then they pump it back in where it's all good. Or they put it back among the groundwater and all that stuff. So most of the hazardous material that comes back up though is from the earth itself. Okay, so it's not. I mean, like I said, 10% of the chemicals that are being pumped down there. The stuff that's coming back up, a lot of that radiation and the stuff that the shale is actually bringing in within the ground is actually the hazardous stuff. So it's already part of the earth. So unless the earth was already polluting itself, it's weird. It's just hazardous to the more up on top, the much higher levels of earth. So this natural gas, the other thing that they claim is horrible about it is methane gas is also released, and it is released. They claim that this is a much stronger greenhouse gas than what even CO2 is. Well, and that is true. Methane gas is extremely volatile toward the environment in regards to a greenhouse gas. It holds a lot more of the sun's radiation, causing the earth to warm up, and that is true. But methane gas doesn't last that long in our environment. Once it's released into the atmosphere, it actually decays very, very rapidly. In fact, it decays so rapidly that most scientists say it has little to no effect on the Earth's atmosphere at all because of its decay rate being so rapid. So it was a good try, but if we stick to the science of this, it holds no water. The other thing that they believe is that natural gas is actually a hindrance upon the search for renewable, cleaner energy. So there was coal, right? That's what we use for like ever, blah, 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 and we still use this on today. Natural gas is 50 to 60% cleaner and produces less CO2 than what coal does. So it is a lot cleaner of an energy source than what coal is, right? Well, they're claiming that this is just a hindrance or a crutch while we're moving forward, and that we can it's keeping us from developing new technologies for all of this stuff. Okay, you can't just flip a light switch and go from point A to point B like that. People are developing things all the time. Not only that, but isn't 50 to 60% cleaner better? I thought it was, but I did go to public school, so there is that. Not only that, but when natural gas is used in some of these newer vehicles, it has 15 to 20% less heat-trapping gases than what gasoline does. This is a step forward. Yet you don't see them going around advocating this in third world countries where they could be using things like natural gas in their industries. Rather, they're just sitting here complaining to us who are already pretty much at the top of being efficient. So the other thing they claim is that it's not renewable. But last time I checked, animals and plants are still dying. So that seems pretty renewable considering that that's what it's made out of. So let's just say that this does become an extreme issue, okay? And we need to cut our carbon emissions even more. So what would be a solution for that? Let's talk about it. Let's look into nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is another form of clean energy that could be used. We saw it skyrocket in the 1970s, I believe, when the Middle East went into a big war and oil prices then went with it. Well, when the oil prices skyrocketed, people realized like there needs to be an alternative to this. People realized that there needs to be an alternative to this. Capitalism happened, okay? Nuclear programs started to go into effect because this would create something that was here, readily available, easy to use, and cheap, okay? They didn't think about the environment at this point in time. Sorry to burst your bubble. But not only that, it's a 0% emissions, okay? Because it's done mainly by water. They used light water reactors, which seemed to take off due to the fact that it was readily available as well as inexpensive. Water is the main source of fuel in this reactor. So it takes these atoms and it splits these atoms, and these atoms then go off in all these crazy directions, and they bounce around, and then they hit other atoms. And then those atoms break down, and they spin off into other directions, and it kind of feeds off one another. Somebody sits in a way smarter chair than I'll ever sit in, and they decide, they keep the energy levels up or down, and that's what creates the energy. In fact, it was such an idea that these people thought that energy would eventually become free for everyone because of how easy it was to maintain and how cheap it was to run. And this all skyrocketed because what? Oil prices began to skyrocket, and it seemed like it was no longer going to be a deemable natural resource. So, if the Earth ended up burning up and bursting into flames at random, we could be like, hey, we could just use nuclear energy, and then we could take care of it ourselves. There is no point for the government to be involved. If capitalists produce a product that is cheaper than what is being used, more efficient and more effective than what is being used, consumers will buy it. It happens over and over and over and over again. Think about what people my generation have compared to what people 2 generations or so back before us had. They were a lot poorer. They didn't have food readily available for the majority of the people on the tables. They didn't have, when I graduated from high school, I ended up making something of myself. I bought a 4-bedroom house. I had almost 3 cars just by myself for a point in time. I mean, it's because I went out there and worked, but not only that, but goods and services have become cheaper and more readily available. It's a lot cheaper to make a car now. And because it's a lot more cheaper, we become more efficient at it. Therefore, you can produce more. And if you can produce more, the price of that product goes down. And you can have a lot more things for a lot less price. We live a lot better now than what people back before us could even hope to dream of. And with that is all part of this capitalistic society. That can be used toward the environment should it ever happen to get that bad. But I just don't see that happening. But if it did, nuclear reactors would skyrocket once again. We would put that to the forefront of what needs to happen because it is a cheap, readily available resource at our disposal. And then you get people, well, it's impractical. It takes up so much room. They don't look good. Let's use solar energy or wind farms. No, let's not. And this is why. One nuclear power plant, to be ran efficiently, takes up about a square mile. Okay? I'm like, oh man, it's a whole square mile. That's huge. Okay, for the energy that it produces, you would need 360 times that space for the wind farm. That is 430 wind turbines that would equal the amount of energy that is produced by one nuclear power plant. That's 360 square miles. You can do the math. 1 square mile, 360 square miles. Which one takes up less space? Okay, I won't answer that one for you. There will be a quiz next week. Well, then what about solar power? Well, first off, they cook birds. I prefer a grill, but environmentalists prefer solar panels. So, to each their own. I just don't think it has the charcoaly taste, but whatever. It would take 75 times the space of one nuclear facility to equivalent the same energy as one nuclear plant. That is 3 million solar panels. Does that seem cost effective to you? Probably not. Not at all, actually. I'm telling you. I'm not asking, I am telling you. It is not. Well, then the other thing they bring up, well, what about what happened in the 70s and the early 80s? Like, in 1979, the catastrophe in Pennsylvania happened. Okay, 1979. And then in 1986 is when Chernobyl had their meltdown. You guys remember what computers looked like back then? Do you remember what your phone looked like back then? Okay. I remember my father had a bag phone. Okay. And if we ever felt threatened, I don't think we would call 911 on it. I think we would use it as a brick in self-defense. Okay? That's how huge these things were. Now you can hold the phone in the palm of your hand and it has more computer power than what the biggest computers did back in that day. So you think with that technology, if we were start building nuclear power plants today, that they would be ran a little bit more efficiently with a little bit better technology? Maybe. Just saying. So not only that, so what is happening with nuclear energy today? Okay? So nuclear power has really kind of taken off in today's world. Today, it accounts for about 10% of the world's energy, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it is kind of big. I would assume that there's a lot of money that goes into actually producing the factory itself, but once it is up and running, it is a much cheaper energy to produce. With 10% of the world's energy, there are currently 439 nuclear reactors in about 31 different countries, which is awesome. I mean, if we can continue to build them, the better we get at them, the more we learn about them. And we can even see that today because the light water reactors, which were used back in the 70s and 80s, are still being built, but they're being built more efficiently with a lot of better technology we have today. But they're also learning to build different types of reactors. So they're starting to experiment with those. Some that may be more safe, or they might run more efficiently and stuff like that. I'm not a nuclear physicist at all, but this is some of the stuff that I have been able to find on it. So it seems like it's really starting to take off. The other thing too is, why aren't they bringing this up? Nuclear plants are a zero emissions clean energy source. Zero emissions. So if they were serious about the environment, why aren't they trying to push toward more nuclear energy? You don't hear it brought up because they only want to complain about the problem because they want to take away your money and put their hands in your pockets so that they don't have to do anything for the rest of their lives. So, with that, I believe that is really all I had to talk to you guys about today. And normally at the end of a show, I would like to go through any questions or comments from the previous one. Right now, you can get a hold of me at Straight White Shoot. That is STR8 WHITE SHOE. And that is on Twitter. Just shoot me a message. I'd love to discuss things with you, hear your ideas, your questions. We also know that I am a big free bracer, which never brings up controversy on Twitter. So if you want to ask me about that, we can converse about that. And I would like to spend the last few minutes in each episode bringing up your questions that you may arise. Anything else would cause me to go way over my time limit. So, this is The Schumann Show.